Once upon a time, in a quiet town, there lived a young girl named Amale. She was known for her kind heart, always eager to help those around her. Amale's life was simple, and although she didn't have much, she dreamed of a better future. She spent her days with her father, Kwame, who was a loving man, but always busy with his work. He worked long hours, trying his best to provide for the family, but was often away, leaving Amale to take care of herself and the home. Amale's stepmother, Aminata, was a different story. She was cold and distant and seemed indifferent to Amale. Despite living in the same house, there was no warmth between them. Aminata wasn't overtly cruel, but her actions made Amale feel neglected and unwanted. Yet, Amale, with her innocence and trusting nature, couldn't understand why her stepmother treated her this way. She simply believed that, with time, Aminata would come to care for her like a real mother. Amale's heart was pure, filled with the hope that one day her family would be whole and loving again. Amale lived with her father, Kwame, a man who was full of love and care for his family. But Kwame's life was consumed by work. He spent long hours in the fields, from early morning until night, trying to earn enough to support them. Though Amale understood that her father worked hard, it made her feel distant from him. She often found herself alone, with only the sound of her own footsteps to keep her company. Her stepmother, Aminata, never seemed to notice. Aminata's coldness was hard to ignore. She didn't have the warm touch of a mother's love. Instead, she treated Amale like a stranger in the house. When Amale tried to talk to her or offer help, Aminata would barely acknowledge her. If she asked about anything, Aminata's responses were short and uninterested. There was no warmth in her words, no smile or laugh shared between them. This made Amale feel small and invisible, as though she didn't matter at all. Aminata's indifference hurt Amale deeply, but the girl refused to show it. She spent her time cleaning, cooking, and trying to keep the house in order, hoping that maybe, just maybe, if she worked hard enough, Aminata would see her worth. But no matter how much she did, the silence between them never changed. It was as though Amale was invisible, and that loneliness started to settle in her heart, leaving a quiet ache. She often found herself staring out the window, wishing her father was home to talk to, or hoping that Aminata would show her a little kindness, even just for a moment. But every day, she felt like the world was growing colder around her, and that emptiness seemed to grow with it. One warm afternoon, Amale stood by the sink, scrubbing her hands after cleaning the dusty shelves in the living room. The cool water trickled over her fingers, bringing a brief moment of relief from the day's heat. Just as she reached for the towel to dry her hands, Aminata's stern voice cut through the quiet room. "Wash them again," she ordered, her dark eyes fixed sharply on Amale. Amale hesitated, glancing down at her already clean hands. "But I said again," Aminata interrupted coldly, her voice leaving no room for argument. Swallowing her confusion, Amale turned back to the sink and obediently washed her hands a second time. The water splashed against her wrists as she rubbed her fingers together under Aminata's watchful gaze. When she was done, Aminata snatched the bowl of used water and carried it away without saying a word. Amale stood frozen for a moment, puzzled. Why would anyone care so much about simple hand washing? And why did Aminata always collect the used water so carefully instead of pouring it out like everyone else did? Days passed, and the strange behavior continued. Whenever Amale returned from tending the small garden or sweeping the front yard, Aminata insisted she wash her hands repeatedly. Each time, she would hover nearby, waiting to take the water away as if it was something precious. Amale's curiosity grew stronger with each encounter. Late one evening, as the orange glow of sunset faded from the sky, Amale sat on the doorstep, thinking, "Why does she need that water?" she whispered to herself. She tried to brush it off, telling herself that perhaps Aminata was just peculiar. But deep down, a small unease crept into her heart. Something didn't feel right. Amale wanted to believe there was no harm in it, but questions lingered in her mind. What was Aminata doing with that water? And why did it always have to be her hand-wash water? Despite her innocence, Amale couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than what met the eye. As days turned into weeks, Aminata's strange behavior became routine. Every time Amale washed her hands, Aminata was there, watching closely. Without fail, she would collect the used water and quietly disappear into the kitchen. Amala thought it was odd, but never questioned it. Maybe she just doesn't like wasting water, Amale told herself, trying to make sense of it. After all, their town often struggled with water shortages, and perhaps Aminata was just being careful. What Amali didn't know was that Aminata had a hidden purpose. She wasn't saving the water to throw it out later or for cleaning. Instead, she was using it to cook meals for the family. The same water that had rinsed dirt and sweat off Amali's hands was being poured into soups, stews, and pots of porridge. Aminata stirred the bubbling food without hesitation, her face calm, as if nothing was wrong. Amali, innocent and trusting, never suspected a thing. She would sit at the dinner table with her father, happily eating the food Aminata had prepared. Though the meals often tasted strange, Amali thought little of it. She was simply glad to share a meal with her father after his long days of work. Aminata, as always, remained distant, offering no warmth or conversation as they ate. The thought that her stepmother might be doing something harmful never crossed Amale's mind. To her, Aminata was just a cold woman who didn't care for her, but not someone who would cause harm. So Amali continued washing her hands without question, unaware that her trust was being quietly betrayed with every meal placed before her. Amali's heart was filled with big dreams. Even though her life was simple and often lonely, more than anything, she wanted to become a teacher. She loved the idea of helping the children in her town learn to read, write, and build better futures for themselves. Whenever she saw little ones running along the dusty paths, their laughter filling the air, she imagined standing in front of a classroom filled with eager faces, guiding them toward knowledge. One quiet evening, as the stars sparkled above their small home, Amale sat beside her father, Kwame, on the front porch. The air was cool, and the scent of earth lingered after a long day of work. Gathering her courage, Amale spoke softly. "Papa, I want to be a teacher someday." Kwame turned to her, surprised, but pleased. "A teacher?" he asked with a smile. "That's a wonderful dream, Amale. You're smart, and you have a good heart. I believe you can do it." Amale's face lit up with joy at his words. His belief in her meant everything. "Really, Papa? You think I can?" Kwame placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Yes, my daughter, but it won't be easy. You'll have to work hard and never give up. But if anyone can do it, it's you." Amale's heart soared with hope. She held on to his encouragement tightly, like a treasure, but her happiness didn't last long. The next morning, she excitedly shared her dream with Aminata as they prepared breakfast. "Stepmother, I want to be a teacher someday," Amale said, hoping for even the smallest bit of approval. Aminata glanced at her with a cold, dismissive expression. "A teacher?" she scoffed. "Girls like you don't need such dreams. You should learn to be a good wife instead. Teaching is not for people like us." The words stung, but Amale bit her lip and said nothing. Her stepmother's lack of belief hurt deeply, but she refused to let it destroy her dream. She held on to her father's words of encouragement, reminding herself that she was capable. Even if Aminata didn't believe in her, Amale promised herself that one day she would stand in front of a classroom teaching and inspiring the next generation of children. It started with a small ache in Amale's stomach. Just after dinner one evening, she clutched her belly, hoping the pain would pass quickly. "Maybe I ate too fast," she thought, trying to convince herself it was nothing serious. The meal Aminata had prepared had tasted strange, but Amale didn't want to seem ungrateful, so she had eaten it quietly without complaint. As the night went on, the pain grew worse. Her body felt heavy, and a wave of dizziness swept over her. Amale's forehead grew warm, sweat forming on her skin, despite the cool night breeze. She lay curled up on her thin mattress, biting her lip to keep from crying out. "It's just a small sickness," she whispered to herself. "I'll be fine tomorrow." But the next day, things didn't get better. Amale forced herself to get out of bed, her legs weak and wobbly beneath her. She tried to go about her chores, sweeping the floor and fetching water from the well, but her body was too tired. Her head throbbed, and her hands trembled as she worked. Every step felt heavier than the last, but Amale didn't want anyone to see how sick she was, especially Aminata. "Are you feeling lazy today?" Aminata's cold voice echoed from the kitchen when Amale struggled to carry the water jug. Amale shook her head quickly, forcing a smile despite the pain gnawing at her inside. "No, stepmother. I'm fine," she lied, her voice weak. In truth, she was far from fine. Each day her health seemed to get worse. The food, cooked with water Amale unknowingly washed her hands in, was poisoning her slowly. But Amale, innocent and unaware, had no idea what was causing her illness. She only knew that her body was failing her, yet she kept pushing herself, hoping the sickness would go away on its own. Little did she know, her stepmother's deceit was silently harming her with every meal she ate. Amale's sickness grew worse with each passing day. Her body became weak, and simple tasks felt like impossible challenges. The sharp pain in her stomach never fully went away, and she often felt dizzy and exhausted. Her face, once bright with energy, grew pale and tired. Even eating made her uneasy, as every meal seemed to leave her feeling worse than before. Despite her struggles, Aminata showed no concern. If anything, she seemed pleased by Amale's weakness. "If you're too sick to work, then you're of no use," Aminata said coldly one morning, handing Amale a broom. Amale's legs felt like they would collapse, but she gripped the broom tightly and forced herself to sweep the floor. Aminata began taking control of everything in the house. She assigned Amale the hardest chores, knowing the girl didn't have the strength to complete them. When Amale failed to finish, Aminata scolded her loudly, making sure Kwame would hear. "She's lazy now, always making excuses," Aminata complained to Kwame one evening. Kwame, tired from work and unaware of the full truth, simply sighed and looked disappointed. Amale's heart ached at her father's silence. She wanted to explain how sick she was, but Aminata was always nearby, watching. Amale chose to stay quiet, unsure of who would believe her. Yet deep down, her innocent mind began to ask questions. "Why am I the only one getting sick?" she wondered. Her father ate the same food, but never seemed ill. And why was Aminata so insistent on making her wash her hands again and again, only to take the water away afterward? Amale's suspicions slowly grew. Though she didn't fully understand what was happening, she knew something wasn't right. As her body weakened further, so did her trust in Aminata. A quiet fear settled in her heart, whispering that her illness might not be a simple sickness after all. One sunny afternoon, Amale sat weakly on the front steps of her home, her body tired and aching. The soft breeze ruffled her thin dress, but it did little to lift her heavy spirit. She had been sick for so long now, and each day felt harder than the last. Just as she was about to close her eyes and rest, a familiar voice called out cheerfully, "Amale!" Amale looked up and saw Thandeka, her childhood friend, walking toward her with a bright smile. Thandeka was full of energy, her laughter always warm and comforting. Seeing her brought a flicker of happiness to Amale's tired heart. "Thandeka!" Amale greeted, forcing a smile. "It's been so long. I missed you," Thandeka said, sitting down beside her. But her smile quickly faded as she looked closely at Amale. "What's wrong? You look so different. Are you okay?" Amale hesitated, unsure of how to explain. "I'm just a little tired," she said quietly. "It's nothing." Thandeka frowned, not believing her. "Amale, this isn't just tiredness. You look sick." She grabbed Amale's hand gently. "What's going on?" Amale sighed. "I don't know. I've just been feeling unwell for weeks now. My stomach hurts, and I'm always dizzy. But I don't know why." Thandeka's eyes narrowed. "Is someone treating you badly?" she asked carefully. Amale shook her head quickly. No, she said, though doubt lingered in her mind. "Stepmother is distant, but I don't think she would hurt me." Thandeka leaned closer, her voice serious. "Amale, sometimes the people you trust most can be the ones who harm you." Amale's chest tightened at those words. She had never thought of Aminata that way before, but Thandeka's warning stayed with her, like a seed planted in her heart, growing into uneasy questions. Could it be possible that someone in her own home was the reason for her suffering? As Thandeka hugged her tightly before leaving, Amale felt a mix of confusion and fear. Her friend's warning echoed in her mind, leaving Amale wondering if there was a dark truth she had yet to uncover. One late afternoon, Amale was walking slowly toward the kitchen, her body still weak from the sickness that had troubled her for so long. The air was filled with the familiar scent of boiling porridge, but something felt strange. The kitchen door was slightly open, and Amale could hear the sound of water splashing. Curious, she tiptoed closer and peeked inside. Her eyes widened in shock at what she saw. Aminata was standing by the cooking pot, holding a bowl filled with cloudy water. Amale's heart skipped a beat. It was the same bowl Aminata always used to collect her hand-wash water. With calm but deliberate movements, Aminata poured the water into the pot and stirred the food as though nothing was wrong. Amale's stomach turned. Is this why I've been sick? She thought, her mind racing. The truth hit her like a heavy weight, and anger mixed with disbelief rose in her chest. She pushed the door open, her voice trembling but firm. Stepmother, what are you doing? Aminata froze for a second, but quickly regained her usual cold expression. What do you mean? She asked, pretending nothing unusual was happening. Amale pointed to the pot, her voice louder now. That water, that's the water I used to wash my hands. Why are you putting it in our food? Aminata's lips curled into a mocking smile. You must be imagining things, Amale, she said smoothly. You're sick, remember? Maybe it's making you confused. Amale shook her head fiercely. No, I saw you. That's my hand wash water. You've been doing this all along, haven't you? Is this why I've been getting sick? Aminata's face hardened. Stop talking nonsense, she snapped. If you're sick, it's not because of me. Maybe it's just your weak body. Amale felt tears sting her eyes. Aminata's words were sharp, meant to make her doubt herself. But Amale knew what she had seen. Her stepmother was not just distant. She was dangerous. Amale's heart pounded as she stood there, overwhelmed by the betrayal and the bitter truth she could no longer ignore. Amale couldn't hold the truth inside any longer. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, she found her father sitting quietly on the porch after a long day of work. His tired face softened when he saw her approach. Papa, Amale began, her voice trembling. I need to talk to you. Kwame looked concerned. What is it, my daughter? He asked gently. Amale took a deep breath, her hands shaking. It's Aminata. She's been using my hand wash water to cook our food, she said, her voice breaking. I saw her with my own eyes. Kwame's brows furrowed in disbelief. Are you sure, Amale? That doesn't make sense. Why would she do something like that? I'm sure, Papa, Amale insisted, tears welling up in her eyes. I've been sick for weeks because of it. I didn't want to believe it either, but it's true. Please, you have to believe me. Kwame stood up, his face a mix of anger and confusion. Stay here, he said firmly, before marching into the house to confront Aminata. Inside, Aminata was stirring a pot on the stove, her expression calm and distant as always. Kwame's voice was sharp. Aminata, what is this I'm hearing? Amale says you've been using her hand wash water to cook our food. Is that true? Aminata turned slowly, her face calm but cold. What nonsense is this? She said with a scoff. Amale is just imagining things. She's been sick, and now she's blaming me. How ungrateful. Kwame's face hardened. Why would she make this up? She says she saw you. You believe a child over me. Aminata snapped, her voice rising. She's just looking for attention because she's weak. I've been the one cooking and taking care of this house while she lies around doing nothing. Kwame hesitated, doubt flickering in his eyes. Aminata's words, smooth and convincing, made him second-guess everything. I don't know what to think, he said quietly, frustration in his voice. Amale, standing quietly by the door, felt her heart shatter. Her father, the man she trusted most, was unsure whether to believe her or Aminata. Tears streamed down her face as she realized how deeply Aminata's lies had poisoned their home. Feeling betrayed and heartbroken, Amale whispered, I thought you'd believe me, Papa. She turned and walked away, her chest heavy with sorrow. Kwame's silence had hurt more than Aminata's cruelty ever could. The atmosphere in the house grew tense, thick with unspoken words and hidden feelings. Amale no longer felt at home. Each day she stayed in her room as much as possible, avoiding her stepmother's cold presence and her father's troubled gaze. She couldn't understand why her father, the man who had always been her protector, couldn't see the truth about Aminata. The pain of his doubt and silence cut deeper than any illness she had endured. Kwame, too, felt the weight of guilt pressing on him. He had trusted Aminata for so long and had never imagined she would harm his daughter. He tried to talk to Amale, but she avoided him. She could no longer look at him the same way, not after he had chosen to listen to Aminata instead of her. His heart ached with regret, but it seemed too late to fix things. Aminata watched the growing distance between father and daughter with a sense of quiet satisfaction. She had always been good at manipulating people, and now she had driven a wedge between Amale and Kwame. She used every opportunity to plant seeds of doubt in Kwame's mind, making him believe that Amale was just a difficult, rebellious child. She's always been trouble, Kwame, Aminata would say in a soft, soothing voice. You never see it, but she's been trying to tear us apart for a long time. Kwame would listen, his face full of confusion and worry, unsure of who to trust. He felt torn between his love for Amale and his growing fears that something was wrong with her behavior. Meanwhile, Amale, though heartbroken, was becoming stronger in her resolve. She could see how much damage Aminata was causing, not just to her, but to her whole family. The manipulation and lies were too much to bear, but no matter how much she hurt, she refused to let Aminata win. The distance between her and her father made Amale feel as though she was alone in the world, but she began to realize that she had to stand up for herself. The house was no longer a place of warmth and safety. Instead, it felt like a battleground, where trust and love were slowly being destroyed. And with each passing day, Amale knew that she would have to make a choice, either stay and suffer under Aminata's control, or leave and fight for a better future on her own. The breakdown of her family was painful, but it was also the beginning of her journey towards something new. Amale sat quietly on her bed that night, staring out the small window of her room. The moonlight softly illuminated her face, but inside, she felt darkness, the weight of everything that had happened. Her illness, her father's doubt, Aminata's cruelty, was pressing down on her. For so long, she had tried to hold on to hope that things would get better, that her family would heal. But the truth was undeniable now. She couldn't stay here anymore. The house no longer felt like home. It was a place of lies, manipulation, and pain. She had tried to make her father see what was happening, but he had turned away from her. Even though he loved her, his heart was clouded by Aminata's influence. Amale couldn't keep waiting for things to change. She needed to change her own life. She wiped away the tears that had been falling down her cheeks and stood up, determination filling her heart. "I can't keep living like this," she whispered to herself. "I have to leave." The decision came quickly, but it was not easy. Amale had always been close to her father, and leaving him behind hurt deeply. But she knew she had to protect herself, to find a place where she could be free from Aminata's poison. She packed her few belongings into a small cloth bag, holding each item with care, as if it were a piece of her past she needed to carry forward. Before the sun rose, Amale quietly slipped out of the house. She took one last look at the place where she had once dreamed of a happy family, but now all she saw was a prison. She stepped into the early morning mist, her heart heavy, but filled with a new sense of strength. She didn't know what awaited her in the neighboring town, but she knew she had to try. She needed to be independent, to live her life on her own terms, away from the cruelty that had tried to break her. As Amale walked toward the unknown, she felt a strange sense of peace. She was scared, but she also felt like she was finally taking control of her future. She didn't know how long it would take, or what challenges she would face, but one thing was certain: she was done being a victim. From that moment on, Amale was going to fight for her dreams, for her freedom, and for a life she could call her own. Amale's first few days in the neighboring town were not easy. She had no family or friends there, and everything felt so new and overwhelming. She found a small, quiet room to rent in a modest building, but it was a struggle to make ends meet. She didn't have much money, so she took any work she could find, from cleaning homes to helping at the local market. Some days were long, and the work was hard, but Amale never gave up. She knew she had to keep moving forward. Slowly, things began to improve. Amale's hard work paid off as she started to earn a bit more. She carefully saved every coin, determined to one day attend school and make her dream of becoming a teacher come true. At night, when she was alone in her little room, she would close her eyes and picture herself standing in front of a classroom, teaching the children in her village. The thought brought her comfort and gave her the strength to keep going. As the months passed, Amale began to heal. The pain from her past, from her stepmother's cruelty and her father's doubt, slowly faded. She learned to trust herself again, to believe in her own strength. She had been through so much, but she was still standing. She started to make friends in the town, people who respected her for her kindness and hard-working spirit. They saw the true Amale, not the girl who had been manipulated and broken down. One afternoon, as Amale sat outside, watching the children play in the street, she realized something important. She had already begun her journey toward becoming a teacher. She didn't need to wait for approval or permission. She was already learning the lessons she needed, lessons about resilience, self-worth, and the power of following her dreams. In time, Amale managed to save enough money to start attending school. It wasn't easy, balancing work and study, but she was determined. Every day, she grew closer to the life she had always dreamed of. She never forgot where she came from, but she no longer let her past define her. The future was hers to shape, and she was ready for it. Amali had made peace with her past. She had learned that no matter how painful things could be, there was always a way forward. And with each step, her journey toward becoming a teacher and a woman who would shape the future had only just begun. Amali's story inspires us to face challenges, believe in ourselves, and never give up on our dreams. If you enjoyed this journey and want to hear more powerful stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with others who need a dose of inspiration. Your support means everything.